The world remembers success, but it forgets how it was built. Every great name you know was once unknown, laughed at, or doubted. Jack Ma was one of them. And if you've ever failed or been told you're not good enough, this story is for you. In the late 1960s, China was rebuilding itself from the ground up. Technology didn't exist the way it does now, and opportunity was almost impossible to find. Families lived simply, working long hours for little reward. Jack's parents were traditional performers, traveling musicians who barely made enough to feed the family. There was no wealth, no safety net, just survival. You ever look back and think, there's no way I could start from there? That's exactly where he started. Jack wasn't one of those gifted prodigies you read about. He failed middle school twice and his college entrance exam 3 times. Every time, he fell short of the score he needed. And yet each failure became fuel. He didn't see failure as an ending. He saw it as a teacher. Think about that for a second. How many times have you given up after one no? Jack heard dozens and kept walking. As a teenager, he fell in love with something unusual: English. At the time, it wasn't a common skill in China, but Jack was curious about the outside world. Every morning, before sunrise, he would ride his old bicycle 40 minutes to the Hangzhou hotel, where foreign tourists stayed. And get this, he wasn't getting paid. He just wanted to talk. He'd offer free tours in exchange for a few minutes of conversation. That's how he learned English. Not in a classroom, but by connecting with strangers. One of those tourists gave him his English name, Jack. The man told him, "Your real name is too hard to say, I'll call you Jack." And just like that, Ma Yun became Jack Ma. Funny how a small moment like that can change everything, right? Back then, no one would have guessed that one day that name, Jack Ma, would become one of the most recognized names in business history. Even after college, things didn't come easy. Jack became an English teacher, earning about $15 a month. He loved teaching, though. He believed in communication, in helping people see more of the world. But deep down, he could feel it. That quiet voice that says, "You're meant for something bigger." You ever feel that? That sense that you're supposed to do more, even when life looks perfectly fine? That's the voice Jack listened to. And that voice took him somewhere he could have never planned, into the world of technology. In the mid-1990s, China was just beginning to change. People were talking about trade, about computers, about something called the Internet. Jack didn't even know what that word meant, but that one word, Internet, would change his life forever. He just didn't know it yet. In 1995, Jack Ma was 30 years old, an English teacher with no computer, no money, and no clue what the word Internet really meant. One day, he traveled to the United States as a translator for a trade mission. He didn't go there looking for technology. He went because he could speak English. But fate has a strange way of introducing itself. A friend invited him to see a new machine, a computer connected to something called the World Wide Web. Jack sat down, curious but cautious. The screen glowed, waiting for him to type something. His friend said, "Try searching for anything." Jack thought for a moment and typed one simple word: beer. Results popped up instantly: America, Germany, Japan, but not one from China. He tried again with China. Nothing. In that moment, the teacher saw a gap the size of a nation. He didn't understand the technology yet, but he understood opportunity. He turned to his friend and said, "We have to bring this to China." His friend laughed. "Jack, nobody there even has a computer." But Jack's eyes were already somewhere else, in the future. He didn't see wires and screens, he saw connection. He saw millions of small businesses finally being seen by the world. For him, It wasn't about making money. It was about making access possible. When he came home, he couldn't let go of the idea. He borrowed money to start a small company called China Pages, one of China's first online directories. It failed almost immediately. The country wasn't ready. Most people had never touched a computer. But Jack didn't see that as the end. He saw it as the first brick in a road no one else dared to build. "Someday," he told his wife, "the internet will change everything." And she smiled, not because she understood, but because she knew he believed it. By 1999, Jack Ma had been rejected so many times that failure had become familiar, almost like an old friend. Yet this time felt different. The world was changing fast, and China was waking up to technology. Jack gathered 17 of his closest friends and former students inside his small apartment in Hangzhou. There was no fancy office, no suits, no investors, just mismatched chairs, cheap noodles, and a wild idea. He stood at the front of the room and said, "I have a dream. I want to build an online marketplace, a place where small Chinese businesses can sell to the world." The room went silent. Most of them stared in disbelief. "Jack," one friend said, "you don't know anything about computers." Another added, "No one in China buys things online. They don't even trust credit cards." But Jack smiled the way only dreamers do. "Exactly," he said. "That's why we have to do it." He called it Alibaba, a name he chose for its global familiarity. He liked the story of open sesame, a simple phrase that opened hidden treasures. To him, Alibaba wasn't just a company, it was a key. The key to opportunity for ordinary people. He and his team worked from that tiny apartment day and night, coding, designing, writing, and dreaming. They didn't have money, but they had belief. And sometimes, belief is the most powerful currency of all. When Jack went looking for investors, doors slammed in his face. Silicon Valley laughed. Chinese banks refused to lend him a dime. Some called him delusional, others naive. But Jack didn't chase approval, he chased possibility. He told his small team, "If we try, we have a 1% chance. If we don't, we have 0. That line became their heartbeat. It wasn't a plan built on logic. It was built on faith, and somehow that was enough to keep them moving. As Alibaba's website went live, traffic trickled in slowly, then suddenly began to rise. Small businesses started signing up. They were tired of being invisible. For the first time, people in China could see their products online. The world still wasn't paying attention, but Jack didn't need the world. He only needed momentum, and deep down, he knew this was the beginning of something unstoppable. The early years of Alibaba were not glamorous. The team worked in a cramped apartment, eating instant noodles and sleeping next to their desks. They didn't have investors or even proper computers, just second-hand machines that overheated constantly. Every day felt like a gamble. Jack wasn't just leading a company, he was keeping hope alive. You could see it in his eyes. Tired, but never empty. Cash was running out fast. Jack couldn't pay full salaries, and sometimes he paid with promises. He gathered the team one night and said, "I know you're scared, but if we survive, you'll be proud you stayed." Some cried, others laughed nervously, but they all stayed. They believed in Jack because Jack believed when no one else did. That kind of faith can move people, and sometimes it moves mountains. Alibaba started gaining small traction, but success came with new problems. Competitors copied their ideas. Government officials didn't understand what they were doing. Banks refused to open accounts for an internet business. Every door that opened seemed to close twice as fast. Jack handled it all with calm, even humor. He'd tell his team, "I failed my exams 3 times. This is nothing." One night, exhausted, he told his wife, "Maybe we should stop." She looked at him and said, "Do you still believe in what you're doing?" He nodded. "Then don't stop," she said. That moment stayed with him. It reminded him why he started. Not to be rich, but to change lives. And that belief became Alibaba's fuel. They called themselves the crazy ones of Hangzhou. And they were. But sometimes it's the crazy ones who end up right. By 2001, Alibaba was still struggling to make money, but it had something stronger: momentum. Thousands of small businesses were joining, even if no one outside China cared yet. Jack began shaping a culture built not on profit, but on purpose. He told his employees, "We are not here to compete with others, we are here to survive." They laughed, but deep down, they understood. In a world chasing results, Alibaba was chasing endurance. In 2003, everything changed. The internet was exploding across China, and global giants began to notice. One of them was eBay, the American e-commerce powerhouse that dominated online sales worldwide. They entered China with money, power, and confidence. Everyone assumed Alibaba was finished. After all, how could a small local startup compete with a billion-dollar empire? But Jack didn't flinch. He smiled and said, "eBay may be a shark in the ocean, but I am a crocodile in the Yangtze River. If we fight here, they lose." At that time, eBay's system was rigid and westernized. They charged fees, used complicated interfaces, and didn't understand the Chinese customer. Jack saw an opening. He built Taobao, a free online marketplace that spoke the language of everyday people. No fees, no barriers, just trust. He made sure Taobao felt human, a place where buyers could message sellers directly, where community mattered more than commerce. "We're not building a website," he told his team. "We're building a home." The competition was brutal. eBay mocked them publicly and poured millions into marketing. But Jack didn't compete with money, he competed with heart. He told his team, "Don't fight them on their strengths, create your own game." While eBay chased efficiency, Taobao chased relationships. And it worked. Within 2 years, Taobao had more users in China than eBay. The impossible had happened. The local underdog had beaten the global giant. By 2005, eBay admitted defeat and left China. Taobao's victory became a national symbol, proof that China could innovate on its own terms. People began to see Jack Ma not as a dreamer, but as a leader. When journalists asked how he did it, he said, "We win because we understand people. Business is not about competition, it's about compassion." Those words echoed through boardrooms and classrooms alike. He had turned kindness into a competitive edge. The world finally began paying attention. Investors who once ignored him now wanted to meet. The same banks that refused his company years before now offered him credit. But Jack didn't gloat. He reminded his team, "Never forget the days we couldn't afford lunch. That hunger is what made us who we are." It wasn't arrogance that drove him, it was gratitude, and that gratitude would carry Alibaba into its greatest chapter yet. By 2005, the tides had changed. Taobao had defeated eBay, and suddenly everyone who once laughed at Jack wanted to listen. Investors flew in from around the world, eager to meet the English teacher who had outsmarted Silicon Valley. And among them was a surprising ally, Yahoo. The company saw Alibaba's potential and invested $1 billion for a 40% stake. It was one of the biggest deals in China's internet history. Overnight, Jack Ma went from local dreamer to international CEO. But even with money in the bank, Jack didn't celebrate. He told his team, "This isn't the finish line, it's the starting gun." He knew success could destroy focus faster than failure ever could. He reminded them of the long nights, the instant noodles, and the faith that kept them alive. "We built this because we cared," he said. "Never let money make us forget that." That line became part of Alibaba's DNA, a compass for every decision that came next. As Alibaba grew, so did Jack's presence. He spoke at universities, conferences, and international forums. But he didn't talk about profits or power. he talked about people. He told young entrepreneurs, don't compete with big companies, compete with yourself, be better than you were yesterday. It wasn't corporate advice, it was human advice. That's what made people listen. He wasn't selling a formula for business, he was sharing a philosophy for life. The media started calling him the face of China's new economy. But fame came with pressure. Every decision was under a microscope. Governments, competitors, and even fans expected him to be perfect. Yet Jack never acted like a tycoon. He still smiled, still told jokes, still spoke like a teacher. Leadership, he said, is about helping others rise, not about standing taller than them. It's a lesson that's easy to quote, but hard to live. Jack lived it every day. By 2010, Alibaba had become an empire, a network of platforms serving millions of businesses. But Jack's heart remained with the small ones, the dreamers, the sellers in back alleys and markets. He never wanted to build a company that replaced people. He wanted one that empowered them. If Alibaba doesn't help at least 10 million small businesses succeed, he said, it's not real success. That mindset turned a company into a movement, and a teacher into a legend. In 2014, Jack Ma stood in New York City, looking up at the massive screens of Times Square. The letters Baba flashed in bold blue light, Alibaba's ticker symbol on the New York Stock Exchange. The company's IPO had just raised $25 billion, the largest in history at that time. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted his name. The man who once failed his exams, who was rejected from KFC, who couldn't get a bank loan, was now at the top of the world. But when he smiled that day, it wasn't pride you saw, it was disbelief. He later said it was never about money, it was about proving that dreams work if you don't stop. That sentence became a global quote, printed on posters and echoed in classrooms. But few understood the full truth behind it. Jack knew how heavy success could feel. Every milestone came with sacrifice, lost time, endless criticism, and the quiet loneliness that comes with leadership. Yet he always carried it with grace. I don't want to be loved by everyone, he once said. I just want to be respected for trying. Even after the IPO, Jack's vision didn't slow down. He expanded Alibaba into cloud computing, logistics, and digital payments through Alipay. He wasn't building a company anymore, he was building an ecosystem. His goal was simple but bold, to make doing business anywhere in the world as easy as clicking a button. It was no longer about China, it was about humanity. And every time he spoke, whether to students or CEOs, his message stayed the same. Dream big, start small, move fast. But success has a strange way of testing people. The bigger Alibaba became, the more criticism Jack faced. Some said he had too much influence, others claimed he had changed. But Jack didn't argue. He said, when people praise me, I think about what I can do better. When they criticize me, I think about whether they're right. It was classic Jack, calm, humble, and quietly fearless. Even on the mountaintop, he never forgot the valley he climbed from. As he looked back, Jack often said his proudest achievement wasn't the money, or even the IPO. It was the culture, the team that stayed loyal through every storm. We built this together, he told them, and someday we'll step back together. He knew leadership wasn't about holding on, it was about knowing when to let go. And that moment was coming sooner than anyone realized. Part 7. Beyond Alibaba. The teacher returns. In 2019, Jack Ma stood on stage one last time as CEO of Alibaba. He wore a white shirt, held a microphone, and smiled at the crowd of tens of thousands gathered to say goodbye. It wasn't a corporate farewell. It felt like a concert, a celebration of belief itself. He thanked his team, his customers, and the people who doubted him. because, as he said, without rejection I wouldn't have direction. Then, with his signature grin, he added, "I'm just a teacher. I was always a teacher." That's exactly what he returned to: teaching. After 20 years of building one of the most powerful companies in the world, Jack stepped away from business to focus on education and philanthropy. He launched foundations to support rural teachers, small entrepreneurs, and environmental projects. For him, this wasn't retirement, it was rebirth. He wanted to inspire a generation that believed in purpose before profit. "Money is like water," he said. "If it flows, it's good. If it stops, it stinks." Even after stepping down, Jack's words continued to travel the world. In speeches, he reminded young people that failure is a gift. "If you never fail," he said, "you will never grow." He talked about rejection like an old friend, about humility like a secret weapon. And when asked about his greatest achievement, he didn't mention billions or IPOs. He said, "My biggest success is that my team can run Alibaba without me." That's legacy. When the dream continues without the dreamer, Jack's story reminds us that greatness doesn't start with genius. It starts with persistence. He wasn't a programmer, he wasn't a banker. He was just someone who refused to quit. And that refusal built an empire. In a world that tells you to be realistic, Jack Ma chose to be unreasonable. And sometimes, unreasonable dreams are the ones that change everything. Jack Ma once said, "Today is hard, tomorrow will be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine." Most people quit on the second day. The pain, the doubt, the exhaustion, instead that they all whisper the same lie: "You can't do this." But Jack's story proves that the ones who survive the storm aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who keep walking when it hurts the most. So if you're listening right now, wondering when your sunshine day will come, don't stop. Every rejection, every failure, every closed door is just another chapter in your training. Life doesn't hand success to you. It hands you the tools to build it. And you don't need a perfect plan, you just need the courage to start and the persistence to keep going when everyone else stops. From a boy on a bicycle giving free tours to the founder of a global company, Jack Ma never stopped believing that small people can do big things. His story isn't about business, it's about belief. It's proof that you don't have to be special to do something extraordinary. You just have to keep showing up no matter how many times you fall. And maybe that's the real message. Not how Jack Ma built Alibaba, but how he built himself. Out of rejection, out of failure, out of faith. Because in the end, it's not about how far you go. It's about who you become along the way.